The next morning, the girl woke up with a lingering sense of responsibility weighing on her chest. The baby she had saved was now in safe hands at the clinic, but she couldn't shake the worry that something might happen if she wasn't careful. She knew life could be cruel, and even the smallest mistake could bring trouble. Still, she tried to focus on the little things she could control, like earning money to feed her siblings and keeping them safe. She left the apartment, clutching a small bag of items she had found the day before at the dump. Her routine was always the same: navigate the busy streets carefully, avoid trouble, and find anything valuable to sell. Today, though, something was different. People on the street were whispering, some giving her curious looks. She felt a strange mix of pride and confusion. She hadn't done anything for attention. She had only helped because it was right. The news of her act had started to spread quietly. A local shop owner told a few neighbors about the girl who had saved a baby from the dump, and soon others were talking too. In the city, stories like hers didn't often travel far, but word of courage sometimes found a way to move faster than expected. She had no idea that the small act of kindness she had shown would begin to ripple through the lives of people she had never met. At the clinic, the baby was growing stronger by the day. The nurse who had first taken the baby in was amazed at the girl's bravery. She asked questions about the child's parents, trying to uncover any clue about why the baby had been abandoned. The girl recounted every detail, her memory sharp despite the exhaustion she felt from her life's constant struggles. The nurse listened closely, taking careful notes, aware that the story could be important in ways the girl could not yet imagine. Outside the clinic, the city buzzed with its usual energy. Street vendors shouted their daily offers, buses rattled down the roads, and people hurried to work or school. Life moved on for most, but for the girl, the memory of the baby's cries lingered in her mind. She knew that saving someone vulnerable was never simple, and it had changed something inside her. She felt stronger, yet more aware of how fragile life could be. Later that afternoon, she returned to the dump to continue her search for recyclables. Her hands moved quickly, sorting through discarded items, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about the baby's tiny hands, its fragile cry, and how helpless it had seemed. The feeling of responsibility was heavy, but it also gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't realized she had been missing. As she worked, a stranger approached her. He was older, dressed in clean clothes, and had a calm, observing look. "I heard what you did," he said quietly. "It was brave saving that baby like you did." The girl looked up, startled. She wasn't used to compliments, especially from strangers. I couldn't leave her there," she replied softly, glancing down at the pile of recyclables. The man nodded. "I know, that's why I wanted to meet you. People don't often act like that, not even when it's easy." "You have courage." She wasn't sure how to respond. She didn't think of herself as brave, just someone who had to do what felt right. Still, the recognition felt strange, even comforting. She nodded silently, then went back to her work, unsure what else to say. That evening, the clinic called her family. The nurse explained that the baby was safe and being cared for, but they needed more information. They asked if the girl could come by to give a full account of what had happened. She agreed, though her heart raced with nerves. She had never spoken at length about anything important to anyone outside her family before. Now she would have to explain every detail of the day she found the baby. The next day, she arrived at the clinic. People were waiting to hear her story. Some reporters, some concerned citizens, and the nurse who had helped the baby. She felt a mixture of fear and determination as she spoke, recounting the events with careful attention. She didn't exaggerate or add any drama. She simply told the truth. The crowd listened, captivated by her sincerity and the courage in her voice. Afterward, the nurse pulled her aside. "You did something incredible," she said softly. "I know you didn't do it for recognition, but people need to know about you. You've inspired many already." The girl felt a flush of embarrassment and pride. She wasn't used to being praised, but she realized that sometimes sharing your story could help others see that bravery and kindness still existed in the world. As she left the clinic, she noticed that a few people on the street were looking at her with newfound respect. She wasn't sure what to make of it, but she kept moving, focused on the practical matters of her life, finding food, earning a little money, and keeping her siblings safe. Yet deep down, she couldn't ignore the thought that maybe, just maybe, her life was beginning to change in ways she could not yet understand. That night, she sat quietly in her small apartment, Thinking about the baby and the day's events, she looked at her siblings sleeping peacefully and realized that, even in their small world of struggle and hardship, moments of courage could shine brightly. She didn't know what the future held, but she felt a quiet hope that good things could come, even from places where life was hardest. The days passed, and the girl continued her routine, but she noticed subtle changes. People smiled at her more often, sometimes offering small gestures of kindness or assistance. The story of her bravery seemed to ripple outward, touching lives she would never know. Though she remained cautious and grounded, she began to see that her actions had power beyond what she had imagined. Meanwhile, the investigation into the baby's identity was ongoing. Authorities checked records, social media, and missing persons reports. Every clue pointed to a mysterious past, a life that had been hidden from the world. The girl had no idea that the simple act of saving a baby in a dump would soon reveal a truth about herself that had been hidden for years. For now, she focused on the immediate. She took care of her siblings, worked tirelessly to earn money, and helped others in her neighborhood whenever she could. Her days were still hard, but they were now filled with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. Saving the baby had awakened something in her, a belief that even the smallest person could make a big difference in the world. As the sun set over the city, she sat on the small steps of her apartment, looking at the horizon. The sky was painted with soft oranges and purples, and she felt a quiet peace she hadn't known in years. Life was still full of challenges, but it was also full of moments like this, moments that reminded her that courage, kindness, and hope could exist even in the hardest places. She hugged herself, feeling the weight of the day and the promise of tomorrow, knowing that her life, though difficult, was just beginning to unfold in ways she could never have imagined. Days turned into weeks, and the girl's life remained busy and full of challenges, but there was a new undercurrent running through everything she did. The story of how she had saved the baby from the dump had begun to spread far beyond her small neighborhood. People in the city talked about her bravery, and soon, reporters and journalists were asking to meet the girl who had risked her life to help a tiny, helpless child. She wasn't used to attention, and the thought of being in the spotlight made her nervous. Still, she knew that she couldn't ignore the chance to share the story. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about showing that kindness and courage mattered, even when the world seemed unfair and harsh. When she agreed to meet the reporters, her heart pounded with both fear and determination. At the small clinic where the baby was now being cared for, cameras and microphones were set up, and reporters waited eagerly. She walked in quietly, carrying herself with the same humble confidence she always had. The baby, now healthier and stronger, slept peacefully in a small crib nearby. The girl took a deep breath and began to recount her story, her voice steady and sincere. She spoke about the early morning at the dump, the sound of the baby's weak cries, and the moment she realized she couldn't leave the child behind. She described the fear and urgency she felt as she carried the tiny body through the streets to find help. Every word she spoke carried the weight of truth, and the audience could feel the emotion behind her actions. The reporters listened closely, some nodding, others wiping away small tears. They asked questions about her life, about how she managed to find courage in such difficult circumstances. She answered honestly, talking about the hardships she faced, the responsibilities she carried, and the love she had for her siblings. She didn't try to make herself a hero. She simply shared the reality of her life and the choice she made when faced with someone in need. Outside the clinic, the city's energy seemed to shift. People who had never met her now spoke of her bravery, and the story began to appear on local news channels and social media. Images of her holding the baby circulated widely, along with the simple truth of her courage. Many were inspired, realizing that acts of kindness could shine brightly even in the darkest places. Meanwhile, the authorities continued their investigation into the baby's identity. They interviewed social workers, checked hospitals, and reached out to missing person organizations. Each step of the investigation brought new clues and questions. The girl didn't know it yet, but her actions had triggered a series of events that would soon reveal a hidden truth about her own life. Despite the attention, the girl's daily life didn't slow down. She still had responsibilities at home, and her siblings still depended on her. She continued to work at odd jobs, collecting recyclables and helping neighbors whenever she could. The world outside seemed to admire her, but her focus remained practical and grounded. Saving the baby had changed her in small, subtle ways, giving her a deeper sense of purpose and strength. One afternoon, as she returned from her work, she noticed a group of people waiting outside her building. Among them was the nurse from the clinic, holding the baby in her arms. She approached the girl with a warm smile and handed the baby over. "Look how strong she's become," the nurse said. "You saved her life and now she's thriving. People are talking about your courage everywhere." The girl smiled, feeling a mix of pride and humility. She held the baby gently, noticing the tiny hands gripping her fingers. She realized that the baby's survival was not just about luck. It was about the courage to act when it mattered most. Over the next few days, invitations came from different organizations and community leaders. They wanted to meet her, honor her, and hear her story. She attended a few meetings, always staying grounded and honest about her life. She emphasized that anyone could make a difference, even in small ways, and that acts of kindness were not about recognition, but about helping when it was needed. Meanwhile, the investigation into the baby continued quietly in the background. Officials discovered inconsistencies in the baby's records, and a trail began to emerge leading back to a wealthy family who had been searching for their missing child for years. The connections were subtle at first, but as they pieced together information, the truth began to reveal itself. The girl, still unaware of the coming revelation, focused on her community. She helped neighbors with chores, checked on other children in the neighborhood, and offered advice to those who were struggling. Her life was still challenging, but she had become a symbol of hope and courage in a world that often felt unforgiving. One evening, as she sat with her siblings, she thought about the baby she had saved. She wondered about the child's future and hoped that someone kind would continue to care for her. Little did she know, the baby's story was about to connect with her own in ways she could never have imagined. The world was moving quietly behind the scenes, and the courage she had shown was about to reveal a secret that would change everything. The days were full of small victories and ongoing struggles. She felt the weight of her responsibilities, but also a growing sense of pride in what she had accomplished. Saving the baby had shown her that even a life full of hardship could contain moments of greatness. She began to believe that her choices, however small, had the power to shape lives. As the sun set each evening, painting the sky with soft oranges and pinks, she would sit on the steps of her apartment, reflecting on her day. She thought about the people she had met, the stories she had heard, and the baby whose life she had touched. Each moment reinforced a quiet truth, that courage, compassion, and action mattered, no matter how small one might feel in the vast world. Little did she realize, the story she had become part of was only beginning. The connections being made behind the scenes, the investigation into the baby's identity, and the whispers of a wealthy family searching for their lost child were all converging toward a truth that would soon touch her own life. For now, though, she continued her journey, guided by courage, hope, and the simple belief that doing the right thing, even when it was hard, was always worth it. Weeks passed, and the girl began to notice more changes in the way people treated her. Strangers greeted her with smiles, and neighbors who had only nodded before now stopped to ask about her day. She had never asked for attention or recognition, but she realized that her courage had sparked something bigger than herself. People began to speak of hope and bravery, and she carried that quietly with her, continuing her daily routines without letting it change who she was. One afternoon, a well-dressed man arrived at the clinic, asking to speak with the girl. She felt a mix of nervousness and curiosity as she was led to a quiet room where he waited. His presence was calm but commanding, and his eyes held a mix of concern and something she couldn't yet understand. "Thank you for what you did," he began. "Your bravery saved a life, and now I need to ask you some questions about the baby." The girl recounted the story again, describing the moment she found the baby and the way she had carried her to the clinic. She spoke with honesty, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. The man listened intently, nodding and making notes, but there was a look in his eyes that made her uneasy. It wasn't suspicion, but something heavier, something she couldn't quite place. As the conversation ended, he asked her to wait, then left the room for a few moments. When he returned, his expression was softer, almost hesitant. "There's something you need to know," he said carefully. "This baby, she is part of a very important family, a family that has been searching for her for a long time." The girl's heart skipped a beat. She had known the baby's situation was unusual, but she hadn't imagined that it connected to someone important or wealthy. She listened carefully as the man explained that the baby had been missing under mysterious circumstances, and that her family had searched tirelessly, unable to find any clue until now. "You saved her life," he continued. "Without you, she may not have survived. And there is more. We believe there is a connection between you and this family, one that may change everything you know about yourself." The words were heavy, and the girl struggled to comprehend their meaning. She had lived her life in hardship, focused on survival, and never imagined that she might be connected to wealth, power, or influence. The idea seemed distant and unreal, yet the seriousness in the man's voice made her sit up straighter, alert and cautious. The man carefully explained that the investigation had revealed records and clues pointing to a missing child from a wealthy family, and that she shared characteristics and details that strongly suggested a connection. The girl's mind raced. Could it be possible that her life of struggle and her everyday hardships were part of a story far bigger than she had ever imagined? Days went by as the investigation continued. Authorities and social workers worked together to verify details, checking records and piecing together fragments of the past. Each step seemed to confirm the unbelievable. The girl who had lived her life in poverty and hardship was linked to the missing child's family. Her courage in saving the baby had not only changed that child's life but had set in motion a discovery that would reveal the truth about her own identity. The girl continued her daily routines, but the weight of this new knowledge pressed on her. She cared for her siblings, helped neighbors, and worked tirelessly, but she couldn't ignore the growing reality that her life was on the brink of change. The baby she had saved was thriving, and each time she saw her, she was reminded of how fragile and precious life could be. The thought that she herself might belong to the family that had been searching for this child added a layer of complexity she was still learning to understand. Finally, one morning she was invited to meet the family. She entered a large, elegant home that was unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls were lined with artwork, and the rooms were spacious and full of light. The contrast to her small, crowded apartment was stark, and she felt a mixture of awe and discomfort. The family waited in the living room, their expressions a blend of hope, relief, and nervous anticipation. The moment they saw her, emotions ran high. The mother, a woman with kind eyes, moved forward slowly, reaching out with trembling hands. "Could it be?" she whispered, her voice catching. The girl looked at her, unsure what to say. The room was silent, filled with a tension that seemed almost unbearable. "Yes," said the father quietly. "We believe you are our missing daughter." The words hit her like a wave. Her mind struggled to process them, to reconcile the life she had always known with this new reality. She had been a struggling girl living day by day, and now she was part of a family she had never met, wealthy and searching for her for years. The emotions were overwhelming: shock, confusion, disbelief, and a strange sense of belonging. The mother hugged her gently, and the father held her hands. The baby she had saved sat nearby, now healthy and alert, watching the reunion with innocent eyes. The girl felt tears streaming down her face, a mixture of joy and fear, realizing that her life had shifted in ways she could never have imagined. She was connected to this family not just by chance, but by a series of events that had led her to save a life and uncover the truth about herself. Over the next days, the family shared stories about her childhood, their search for her, and the moments they had never forgotten. They told her about the love they had always felt, the hope that had never died, and the determination to find her no matter what. The girl listened, absorbing each word, realizing that her life had always been part of a larger story that she was only now beginning to understand. Despite the wealth and comfort surrounding her, she remained grounded. She still remembered the struggles of her old life, the nights when food was scarce, and the weight of responsibility she had carried for her siblings. But now she had a choice, a chance to shape her future with new resources, support and love, while holding on to the values that had guided her through hardship. The family welcomed her fully, but they also respected the journey she had endured. They didn't rush her or demand she forget the life she had known. Instead, they offered guidance, understanding, and patience. She was no longer alone, yet she carried with her the strength and resilience that had defined her entire life. In quiet moments, she reflected on the chain of events that had led her here: the cries in the dump, the rush to save the baby, and the courage to act even when the world seemed indifferent. It amazed her how a single act of kindness could set in motion events that revealed truths, forged connections, and changed lives forever. She realized that her bravery had not only saved a child, but had also brought her to a place she never thought possible. A place of love, belonging, and hope. The girl understood that her story was not just about survival or struggle. It was about courage, compassion, and the unexpected ways life could unfold. She had faced the harshest realities of the world, yet her actions had opened doors to a future filled with possibilities. The truth about her identity, once hidden, had now come to light, and she embraced it with a heart full of gratitude and determination to live fully, no matter what challenges remained. As she settled into this new chapter, she thought of the baby she had saved, the family she had discovered, and the life she had lived. Each moment, each choice had led to this intersection of past, present, and future. She realized that courage and kindness were not measured by wealth or status, but by the willingness to act when it mattered most. The girl who had once walked the streets in struggle had now found herself at the center of a story that would inspire others for years to come. Life had changed completely for the girl, but in ways that felt both exciting and strange. She was no longer just the struggling teenager trying to survive day by day. She had discovered her true identity and had a family who loved her. Despite all the wealth and comfort around her, she stayed humble, remembering the long days of hard work, the hunger, and the responsibility she had carried for her siblings. Those experiences had shaped her and given her strength that no luxury could replace. She spent her mornings learning more about the family she had never known. They shared stories of the time she had been missing, the efforts they had made to find her, and the love they had always held for her. Each story made her feel a mix of sadness for lost time and gratitude for finally being reunited. She listened carefully, absorbing the history and trying to reconcile the girl she had always been with the young woman she was becoming. But even with her new family, she didn't forget the community she had come from. She knew the struggles of her old neighborhood were far from over, and she felt a responsibility to help those still living in hardship. She began visiting her old streets, speaking to children and encouraging them to pursue small acts of kindness and courage, just as she had. Her story had become a symbol, and she wanted it to inspire others without making them feel powerless. The baby she had saved, now thriving and healthy, became a central part of her life. She visited often, playing with her and holding her close, remembering the day she had first heard the faint cries among the piles of trash. The baby's laughter and innocence reminded her why courage mattered, and why even small actions could have big consequences. The bond they shared was deep, built on trust and care that had started in the darkest moments of their lives. Her siblings also began to experience changes in their lives. With the girl's newfound support, they attended school more regularly and received the care they had needed for years. She watched them grow and learn, proud of how far they had come despite the obstacles they had faced. Her role shifted from protector to mentor, guiding them with wisdom gained from her own journey. The family she had discovered welcomed her fully, offering support and guidance while respecting her roots. They encouraged her to explore her talents, pursue her dreams, and make choices for herself. She learned new things every day, about life, about herself, and about the possibilities that now lay before her. Yet she never lost the humility that had defined her, never forgetting the streets she had walked and the struggles that had shaped her courage. One evening, she reflected on the chain of events that had led her here. She thought of the cries in the dump, the fear she had felt, and the instinct to act despite danger. That single moment had set off a series of events that had not only saved a life, but had revealed the truth about her own existence. She realized that life often presented opportunities in the smallest and most unexpected ways, and that courage was sometimes measured by the willingness to act when the world seemed indifferent. She also thought about the people who had helped her along the way, the nurse at the clinic, neighbors who offered support, and even strangers who had shown kindness. Each act, no matter how small, had contributed to the path that had led her to her true family. She understood that her story was not just about survival or bravery, but about the interconnectedness of lives and how compassion could ripple through the world. As months passed, she settled into a balance between her old life and her new one. She spent time with her family, helped her community, and nurtured the baby she had saved. Her days were full, challenging, and rewarding. She continued to face obstacles, but now she had resources, guidance, and love to help her navigate them. The girl who had once been struggling to survive had become a young woman who could inspire and make a difference in ways she had never imagined. She also began to think about the future. She wanted to continue helping those in need, to create opportunities for children in her old neighborhood, and to ensure that acts of courage and kindness were recognized and celebrated. She knew that the power to change lives didn't come from wealth alone, but from the determination to act when it mattered most. Her journey had taught her that anyone, regardless of their circumstances, could make a profound difference. One day she returned to the dump where it had all begun. She walked carefully, remembering the day she had heard the baby's cries and the fear and urgency she had felt. The place was still harsh and difficult, but she no longer felt powerless there. She understood that even in the toughest environments, courage could shine, and lives could be transformed by a single act of kindness. She left small gifts and supplies for children in the area, a reminder that someone cared and that hope still existed. The girl realized that her life had come full circle. She had been lost and struggling, yet her choices had led her to a life filled with love, family, and opportunity. She had saved a life, uncovered her own identity, and discovered the power of compassion and courage. Her journey was a testament to the idea that no matter how hard life might be, bravery, kindness, and determination could open doors to unimaginable possibilities. As she watched the sunset from her new home, the girl felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. She knew that challenges would continue, that life would never be without struggle, but she had learned how to face them with courage and grace. The baby she had saved, her siblings, and her newfound family were all part of a future she could now shape. The girl who had once walked through hardship had become a symbol of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, a single act of bravery could change the world.